Today, we're going to explore one of the most fascinating and powerful stories from the Bible, the story of Samson. It's a tale that has everything: incredible strength, romance, betrayal, and ultimately, redemption. But more than that, it's a story about choices, consequences, and the complex relationship between human weakness and divine purpose. Our story begins over 3,000 years ago in ancient Israel, during a time when the Israelites were struggling under the oppression of their enemies, the Philistines. The Philistines had been ruling over Israel for 40 years, and the people were desperate for hope. In a small town called Zorah, there lived a man named Manoah and his wife, who had been unable to have children for many years. One day, something extraordinary happened. An angel appeared to Manoah's wife with an incredible message. "You will conceive and give birth to a son," the angel said. "But this child will be special. He must never cut his hair, drink wine, or eat anything unclean. He will be a Nazirite, set apart for God from birth, and he will begin to deliver Israel from the Philistines." This wasn't just any pregnancy announcement. This was a divine calling. The child would be blessed with supernatural strength, but it came with conditions. His long hair would be the symbol of his covenant with God. When the baby was born, they named him Samson. From the very beginning, it was clear this child was different. As he grew, so did his strength. As Samson grew into a young man, his incredible strength began to manifest in ways that amazed and terrified those around him. The Spirit of God would come upon him, and he could perform feats that seemed impossible. His first recorded act of strength happened when he was walking through a vineyard and encountered a young lion. Most people would run, but when the lion attacked, Samson grabbed it with his bare hands and tore it apart as easily as someone might tear paper. He told no one about this incident. It was just the beginning. But here's where we see the first glimpse of Samson's character flaw. Despite being called to deliver Israel from the Philistines, Samson was attracted to Philistine women. He fell in love with a Philistine woman in Timnah and demanded that his parents arrange a marriage. His parents were troubled. "Can't you find a wife among our own people?" they asked. But Samson was determined. What they didn't know was that God was working through even Samson's questionable choices to accomplish his greater purpose. The wedding celebration was a week-long affair, as was the custom. During the feast, Samson decided to pose a riddle to 30 Philistine men with a bet attached. If they could solve it, he would give them 30 sets of clothes. If they couldn't, they would give him 30 sets. The riddle was, out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet. The answer related to his earlier encounter with the lion. When he had passed by the carcass later, he found that bees had made honey inside it. But the Philistines had no way of knowing this. For 3 days they struggled with the riddle. Growing desperate and angry, they threatened Samson's new wife. "Get the answer from your husband, or we'll burn you and your father's house." Terrified, she pleaded with Samson through tears. "You hate me. You don't really love me," she cried. "You've given my people a riddle, but you haven't told me the answer." For 4 days she wept and pleaded. Finally, on the 7th day, Samson gave in and told her. She immediately told her people. Just before the week was over, the 30 men came to Samson with the answer. "What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion?" Samson knew immediately what had happened. In his anger, he said, "If you hadn't plowed with my heifer, you wouldn't have solved my riddle." The Spirit of God came upon him with tremendous power. He went down to another Philistine city, killed 30 men, took their clothes and gave them to the men who had solved the riddle. Then, burning with anger, he left his wife and went back to his father's house. But the story doesn't end there. In a cruel twist, his wife's father, thinking Samson had abandoned her, gave her to the best man from the wedding. When Samson returned later, expecting to reconcile with his wife, he discovered what had happened. His anger was explosive. "This time I have a right to get even with the Philistines," he declared. What Samson did next was both creative and devastating. He caught 300 foxes, tied them together in pairs by their tails, and fastened torches to each pair. Then he released them into the Philistine grain fields. The foxes ran wild, setting fire to the grain, vineyards, and olive groves. The Philistines' entire harvest was destroyed. When they learned that Samson had done this because of what happened with his wife, they went and burned her and her father to death. Samson's response was swift and final. Since you've acted like this, I swear I won't stop until I get my revenge on you. He attacked them viciously and killed many. Then he went to live in a cave in the rock of Etam. The Philistines weren't about to let this go. They came up in force and camped in Judah, ready for war. When the men of Judah asked why they had come, the Philistines replied, "We've come to take Samson prisoner and do to him what he did to us." 3,000 men from Judah went to Samson's cave. "Don't you realize the Philistines are rulers over us?" they said. "What have you done to us?" Samson replied, "I merely did to them what they did to me." The men of Judah were afraid. They didn't want war with the Philistines because of one man. "We've come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines," they said. Samson agreed, but on one condition: "Swear to me that you won't kill me yourselves." They bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the cave. But as soon as the Philistines saw him and shouted in triumph, the Spirit of God came powerfully upon Samson. The ropes on his arms became like charred flax, and the bindings dropped from his hands. Then Samson found a fresh jawbone of a donkey. With it, he struck down 1,000 Philistines. After this incredible victory, he composed a little poem. "With a donkey's jawbone, I have made donkeys of them. With a donkey's jawbone, I have killed 1,000 men." Time passed, and Samson's exploits became legendary. The Philistines feared him, but they also desperately wanted to capture him. Their opportunity came when Samson fell in love again, this time with a woman named Delilah. The Philistine rulers approached Delilah with an offer she couldn't refuse. "See if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength and how we can overpower him, so we may tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver." This was an enormous sum of money, enough to make Delilah wealthy for life, but it meant betraying the man she claimed to love. Delilah began her campaign of deception. "Tell me the secret of your great strength and how you can be tied up and subdued," she asked. Samson, perhaps thinking it was just playful curiosity, lied to her. "If anyone ties me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I'll become as weak as any other man." The Philistine rulers brought Delilah 7 fresh bowstrings, and she tied Samson with them. Then, with men hidden in the room, she called out, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But Samson snapped the bowstrings as easily as a piece of string snaps when it comes close to a flame. His secret remained safe. Delilah wasn't deterred. "You made a fool of me," she said. "Now tell me how you can be tied." Again, Samson lied. "If anyone ties me securely with new ropes, I'll become as weak as any other man." So Delilah took new ropes and tied him with them. Again she called out, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped the ropes off his arms as if they were threads. This deadly game continued. The 3rd time, Samson told her, "If you weave the 7 braids of my head into the fabric on the loom and tighten it with the pin, I'll become as weak as any other man." But again, when she called out her warning, he easily broke free. Day after day, Delilah nagged Samson. "How can you say, 'I love you,' when you won't confide in me? This is the 3rd time you have made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength." She pressed him daily with her words and nagged him until he was sick to death of it. Finally, Samson told her everything. "No razor has ever been used on my head," he said, "because I have been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man." Delilah realized he had told her the truth. She sent word to the Philistine rulers, "Come back once more. He has told me everything." When Samson fell asleep on her lap, she called for a man to shave off the 7 braids of his hair. Then she began to subdue him, and his strength left him. She called out, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." He awoke and thought, "I'll go out as before and shake myself free." But he didn't realize that God had left him. The Philistines seized Samson and gouged out his eyes. They brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze shackles. They put him in prison and made him grind grain, the mighty warrior reduced to doing the work of an animal. But the story doesn't end in defeat. The text tells us something crucial. The hair on his head began to grow again. The Philistines gathered for a great festival to celebrate their victory and to offer sacrifices to their god Dagon. "Our God has delivered Samson into our hands," they shouted. As the celebration reached its peak, someone called out, Bring out Samson to entertain us. So they brought the blind, broken Samson from the prison to perform for their amusement. Samson was positioned between the two central pillars that supported the temple. Thousands of Philistines were there, rulers, men, women, and about 3,000 more on the roof watching. Then Samson prayed to God, perhaps the first genuine prayer of his life. Sovereign Lord, remember me, please God, strengthen me just once more, and let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Samson reached toward the 2 central pillars and braced himself against them and pushed with all his might. The temple came crashing down on the rulers and all the people in it. Samson killed many more when he died than while he lived. The story of Samson is ultimately about the complexity of human nature and divine purpose. Here was a man blessed with incredible gifts, yet flawed in his character. He was called to deliver Israel, but was often driven by personal desires rather than his divine mission. Yet even in his failures, God's purposes were accomplished. Samson's life reminds us that our weaknesses don't disqualify us from being used by God, but they can limit our effectiveness and bring unnecessary pain. The story teaches us about the importance of our choices, the danger of compromising our values, and the possibility of redemption even in our darkest moments. In the end, Samson's greatest victory came not through his strength, but through his surrender. His story has echoed through the centuries, reminding us that true strength comes not from our own power, but from our relationship with the divine, and that even when we fail, it's never too late to turn back to what matters most. Subscribe to this channel to keep enjoying and learning from these beautiful Bible stories.